This is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling with Platinum versus Impact. This is from April 29th, 2021. Well, people who were saying, myself included, especially in the beginning of this relationship, man, it doesn't feel like it's really caught on that, AEW being a part of your thing and invading is a big deal and blah, blah, blah. Now it's a big deal. Now it's the focal part of the show, and I imagine they are going to reap the rewards. And it's really great to see. It was a well put together show. They had enough ticking clock stuff going on that it really made for a show that, felt impactful, no pun intended, and felt like by the time we got to the end of that show, did we think that Kenny Omega wasn't going to make it? Of course we knew he was going to make it, but the point of a ticking clock or, the fuse on the bomb going down is you want to see what form it takes. That's a lot of holding people throughout a show. I think it's the reason that, for instance, NXT manages to hold its audience. Now, it's not as big as Raw's audience or SmackDown's audience, of course, but they manage to hold that audience throughout the show. And that's an important thing that even the biggest wrestling shows have not been able to do. And if Impact is able to do that, in addition to gaining more fans, how is that anything but a positive, right? Great stuff. We open the show, as well we should, with consequences and desires already being expressed, right? If this is a musical, where are we now is always the first song. What's the situation now? And the situation is everybody wants a shot at Kenny Omega. So Scott D'Amore tells them all to go to the ring, and he's going to address it. Don Callis thanks him for doing so. But then I like that Impact is not completely cowed in front of Don Callis and Kenny Omega, which is the route that they usually go in modern wrestling. We're the heels, we're the champion, we do what we want. It's a tired trope. I like this idea that Impact is like, well, part of being our champion is you're beholden to be at our show. And if you can't honor that commitment, it's going to cost you the prize. I love it because then it puts Callis back on his heels and makes Scott D'Amore look effective, and it makes Impact look important. And I love all of that. It's a subtle thing, and but it's a smart thing. Scott congratulates Kenny, pays respect to Rich Swann, says that May 15th there's going to be, which is called Under Siege, knife fight in the kitchen, hot girl coming out of a cake. Man, that movie was not great, but those two scenes were great. There will be a 6-way match to decide the number 1 contender over the next 2 weeks. 6 qualifying matches. Makes sense to me, right? Number 1 qualifying match, Jake Something against Chris Bay. Chris Bay, who hasn't been there in a while. Chris Bay wins it. In a very good match. Very good match. Very good back and forth. And it's nice to see Chris Bay getting this kind of call. He's obviously a talent that's really, really good. Sami Callihan's wondering if Kenny Omega's plans are going up in smoke. Callis asks what his business is. But Sami goes, whenever Kenny gets here, I'm coming for what's mine. Cool. This idea, and again, face heel doesn't matter, right? They have a common enemy, and it's Kenny Omega, who's got the title. And this is what it should be. That title should feel bigger than people's individual squabbles, at least for a while. Yeah. Taylor Wilde feels like the last decade never happened. And Tennille Dashwood turns up to inquire about them becoming a tag team, but Wilde isn't interested. She's gunning for Deonna Purrazzo's knockout title. Cool. See, everybody's expressing what they want. Before the next match, Morrissey, the once Big Cass, says the industry is filled with bad people. The only difference between him and them is he's not afraid to admit it. Interesting. We got Sam Beal against Morrissey for qualifier, and Morrissey wins, of course. Yeah. Kimberly is going to look forward to beating, and people are like, why are you glossing over the matches? Because on this Impact, they understand, which is right now it's not about the bell to bell as much as it is who's going to qualify for this thing, and is Kenny Omega going to show up, and what's everybody in relation to Kenny Omega being their champion. That's the important parts of the storytelling, which is why that's the parts that I'm discussing. Yeah. Kimberly's looking forward to beating Taylor Wilde with her two best friends by the side. Deonna Purrazzo thinks her and Susan don't need to be there, so she's going to watch from the back. Ooh, dissension. Lee and Susan go to get ready, and Havoc shows up to stare down Deonna. Who's her next challenger? They've done a good job of setting up that idea. Really good. And again, in one brief segment in the beginning of the show, they establish what the point of this show is, and they're already setting stuff up for the pay-per-view and for next week. What do you want? It's well done. Match number 3 is Taylor Wilde and versus Kimberly with Susan. Taylor Wilde wins with an Indian deathlock. How much do I love that? Yeah. Susan comes in to beat her down, but Tenille Dashwood saves Wilde. But Wilde doesn't look happy about it. She doesn't look like she wants to be indebted to Tenille Dashwood, which is good. Little conflict storytelling here. Scott D'Amore has an update on Kenny Omega. It's not the first time Impact has had to deal with a difficult world heavyweight champion. Shout out to Tessa Blanchard. Moose chimes in saying he's the only viable challenger to Omega. He's a 5-star athlete. And then so Scott assuages him by appealing to his ego and says, yeah, this is all you got to do is go through one guy and he qualifies for the 6-way then, right? Moose grabs him by the scruff. James Storm walks up and Moose takes his hands off D'Amore. He tells Moose there's no need to take it out on him. So obviously this is a match that's being set up for next week. Smart stuff. X Division Championship. I like that they're doing the rematches right away for a couple of these titles. Again, good, consistent basis, good, consistent world building they're doing. And in Impact, generally you get a title rematch once you lose the title. That's what they're establishing. And they clearly established through exposition that Rich Swann would not get the same privilege because that was a special case. I'm all for it. So we got X Division champion, the new one, Josh Alexander against Ace Austin. Josh Alexander manages to win in the match that I thought was my favorite, just in terms of bell to bell. Really, really great stuff. It's worth checking out, so I advise you to do that. Good stuff. Wins with that ankle lock. Great job. I mean, now I've seen Ace Austin in person. He's one of the people wrestling in Tampa during WrestleMania week, and impressive. And I love that Josh Alexander is the champion. I think he's a different kind of wrestler than you expect in the X Division, and so it gives them different looks and different stylistic clashes, which is something that I think it's good. Because if it ain't new, it's through. Johnny Swinger's a little short on money. He owes Don Callis $20,000 because, again, Don Callis bet on Kenny Omega to win. But he's got him. Callis asks if he's got a car. If he can do him a favor, they'll just call it quits on the $20K. Callis needs a stooge who can pick up Omega. Swinger tells Don to page him when they're ready, daddy. Cool. Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering are happy to be the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Jazz says Rachel has elevated them to a new level. Fire and Flava says Ellering is the true star because they beat Grace so many times. Ooh, and at Under Siege, they're going to have a rematch for the title. See what I'm saying? Good stuff. This is an Under Siege qualifying match. Brian Myers against Matt Cardona. So then, the right guy moves on, and we go on to the next thing. Violent by Design does a promo. Diener lost to James Storm, so did Eric Young. In this war they're fighting in, it's a long way from being over. When the stakes are their highest, that's when the disease is at the strongest. It's a good, solid promo, right? Now, next week, the War Machine has the opportunity to right this wrong in an Under Siege qualifier. Yeah. So setting up the matches for next week. Love it. El Fantasmo of the New Japan's Bullet Club is heading to Impact Wrestling as of next week. So they give him a nice little highlight package. God, this show is so improved. I know people are like, no, it's been good for a long time. It's been good in terms of bell to bell, but who gives a fuck? Now they're telling stories. Now they're promoting their next show and their next pay-per-view. I love it. Under Siege qualifier, Sami Callihan against Eddie Edwards. A good, brutal match between two guys who know each other very well. But a no contest because Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers interfered and beat all of them up. What can I say? Good stuff. Impact.